I've always been the level-headed one in my group of friends. You know the type, the skeptic, the rational thinker. So, when the urban legend about a haunted video game started circulating in our town, I scoffed along with the rest of them. A cursed video game? What nonsense. It all began one chilly autumn evening when my friends, Mark, Sarah, Jake, and I gathered at Mark's house for our weekly gaming session. We were all avid gamers, and our love for the virtual world knew no bounds. That night, Mark pulled out a dusty, old console from the depths of his closet, a relic from his childhood. He grinned mischievously. "You guys ever hear of the Game of Shadows?" We exchanged skeptical glances. "Isn't that the supposed cursed game?" Sarah asked, her voice filled with doubt. Mark nodded. "That's the one. The one that's supposed to manipulate your reality. It's probably just an urban legend, but let's give it a try for fun." I shrugged, still convinced that it was nothing more than an elaborate hoax. "Sure, why not?" Mark hooked up the old console, and the screen flickered to life, displaying the ominous title, The Game of Shadows. The game had a reputation for being nearly impossible to find, but Mark had managed to acquire a copy from a mysterious source. As we started playing, the game was surprisingly captivating. It drew us in with its immersive storyline, stunning graphics, and eerily realistic sound effects. The gameplay was unlike anything we had ever experienced. The characters seemed to respond to our every move, adapting to our decisions in real time. The first signs that something was amiss came when we encountered a character who seemed to break the fourth wall. He addressed us by our real names and spoke about our personal lives as if he knew us intimately. We exchanged uneasy glances but continued playing, chalking it up to a clever marketing gimmick. The game grew progressively darker as we progressed, the story taking unsettling turns. The characters we had grown attached to started suffering horrific fates, their digital anguish disturbingly palpable, but we couldn't tear ourselves away from the game. It had an uncanny grip on us. As the hours ticked by, the line between the game and reality began to blur. We started seeing glitches in the real world, objects shifting when we weren't looking, strange shadows moving in the corners of our vision. We dismissed it as sleep deprivation and the game's unsettling atmosphere playing tricks on our minds. But then came the moment that shattered our disbelief. As we reached a critical juncture in the game, the character who had been addressing us directly spoke again, his words sending a shiver down my spine. "You're not in control here," he sneered. "You're just puppets in my world." The room grew cold, and our breaths hung in the air like visible whispers. Panic seized us as we tried to quit the game, but the console seemed to have a life of its own, resisting our efforts. We were trapped in a nightmare of our own making. In the game, the characters turned on us, their digital faces contorting into grotesque masks of malice. We fought to regain control, but the game's grip on our reality grew stronger with each passing moment. It was as if the boundaries between the virtual world and our own had collapsed. We watched in horror as the game's characters manifested in our living room, their twisted forms clawing their way into our world. Shadows danced on the walls, and the room filled with a deafening cacophony of inhuman screams. Desperation gripped us as we tried to escape the house, but the front door wouldn't budge. It was as if we were trapped in a digital prison, the game's twisted reality asserting its dominance over our own. In a last-ditch effort to break free, I turned off the console, and the screen went black. But the darkness was brief. The game's malevolent characters materialized before us, their eyes empty voids of malice. "You can't escape," they hissed in unison. That was when we realized the truth. We had become characters in the very game we had dismissed as an urban legend. We were at the mercy of a malevolent force that had transcended the virtual world and ensnared us in its nightmarish web. The characters in the game tormented us, subjecting us to horrors beyond imagination. We were trapped in an endless loop of suffering, our torment fueling the game's insatiable hunger for despair. Days turned into weeks, and we lost all sense of time. We were hollow shells of our former selves, our wills broken, our spirits crushed. We had become slaves to the game, prisoners in a reality where the line between the virtual and the real had been irrevocably erased. I wish I could say that we eventually found a way to break free, that we defeated the malevolent force that had ensnared us. But the truth is far more chilling. We remain trapped, our souls forever bound to the cursed game, destined to endure an eternity of torment. The game of shadows had become all too real, and its haunted legacy would live on, a chilling warning to all who dared to play with forces beyond their comprehension. We were the cautionary tale, the living embodiment of an urban legend that had come to life, and we would forever serve as a chilling reminder that some stories are better left untold.